I'm here.
Welcome. It's a bit quiet with us music, I'll say.
I know. I was going to say we got to start playing our own music.
Yeah,
I was going to say my guitar's in the next room. Maybe I could, you know.
No. You could, mate. You could. I think that'd be better.
I want to keep people in the call. Want to get people in, not
turn into a guitar lesson, mate. That's
yeah, exactly. But what would you play though? Well, how would you start?
That's the question. That is the question.
Do we have something like classical jazz, or do we just go straight into a bit of metal?
Depends what guitar I pick up. Actually, I've got a couple of guitars. I've got my banjo. I've been learning the banjo lately.
Not great for metal though.
The banjo is an interesting one.
Banjo is fantastic.
Yeah,
I've been playing guitar for 20 something years now, and having picked up the banjo, it's just a whole new instrument. Just my mind doesn't work that way.
That's a bit of a twist.
It is. Thank you everyone for joining. We'll just wait for a few more people to join, and we'll kick off shortly. We're just talking if we had some hold music. We neglected to prepare some hold music today, but
so you have to listen to us.
Yabber on for a little bit.
So,
yeah.
We're talking
it's
about
the next best thing.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to hear us?
I will say, I feel like the three of us look identical, which is, you know.
yeah, we've got this going on. Some
glasses.
Yeah,
exactly. Glasses.
Exactly.
It's
the requirement of the job.
That's exactly right.
I ran a workshop earlier. I think it was last year that you attended, Rob. Actually, I think Steve, you were on it as well. You weren't wearing your glasses at the time, but someone asked me, "Oh, you know, Higgsy, how you getting to doing all these workshops with so many different partners? It looks like you've replicated yourself." And they took they shared the screenshot of. That we did like a class photo. There's Rob, who looked almost identical to me, and it says, "You've cloned yourself."
Yeah, it's like the slight beard as well, the glasses,
exactly.
The comb over. It's like it's just a few extra IQ points with the glasses. That's
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too funny. I don't know if you know this, Andrew, but there is a running joke within ANZ Logitech about 3 staff members, of which I'm one of them, that look alike.
It's like a little family affair. There's like Sean, who's the head of VC's the dad, and Steve, the son.
Sean, and I'm guessing there's one other, is there?
That's Pierce. So Pierce is the other guy. And like
the ginger genes run strong in our blood. So
yeah, excellent.
Awesome. We're seeing a bunch more people join. Welcome everybody. We might. I think we might kick off there. We're 1 minute past 11, maybe, and we'll kick off. So I just want to say welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for joining Rob and I. And we have our special guest, Mr. Andrew Higgs, who is joining us from Microsoft today, who is going to bring us some wonderful, wonderful content around Teams on Android. It's been a while since we've had a Talk Techie to me, so awesome. Thank you very much for joining us, and we're really excited to be back doing this. It's been a bit of a chaotic 2 months. I think trade shows are starting to open up. We've been quite busy doing that. Yeah. Visiting, seeing a lot of people. It's been wonderful. But it's really good to be back here and doing this for all you guys as well. Like I said, my name's Steve. We have Rob and we have Andrew as well. And just quickly go over the agenda for today. We're going to look at the Logitech portfolio, particularly the Logitech portfolio that's supporting Teams Room on Android. We're going to talk a little bit about what the latest Collab OS update has brought to our solutions, which is quite exciting. We're going to talk about updating your Teams on Android devices, looking at Teams on Android compared to, I guess, Teams on Windows, and you know, making the decision what is right for you. Andrew's going to bring to us a bunch of information about bulk provisioning, direct join, config profiles, some security. I'm really looking forward and really excited to that part as well. We'll briefly touch on security from a Collab OS perspective, and Yeah, Q&A. So if you have a question, you should notice that there's a Q&A button up the top there. Please throw your questions in there. We'll get to it when we can. We might get to it throughout the webinar. We are keeping this very, very casual. Andrew, Rob, and I are pretty casual guys. So that's the way we like to do it. And I just want to kick off talking about, I guess, our portfolio from Logitech perspective that's supporting Teams Room and Android. And I'm going to guess that a lot of people here who are joining us today have had some exposure or experience with, or maybe even have some of these devices in their fleet. And if you don't, welcome to the line. Here we can actually see a bunch of awesome products. We've got everything that ranges from our, we classify this our medium-sized room, or small room, the Rally Bar Mini. And you've got our medium to large room solution with the Rally Bar. Now, both these products have CollabOS built in. They're running on an Android 10 platform. CollabOS is the operating system that Logitech developed. And within that operating system is the Teams Room on Android application. So these will run Teams Room on Android natively without that external compute. If you are familiar with our solutions, you may be familiar with our larger room solution like the Rally Plus, or perhaps our older but very, very competent solution with the Meetup for those small rooms. We have this device called Roommate, which is essentially taking that Android compute that's in the Rally Bar or the Rally Bar Mini, putting in its own chassis and making that functional for those large spaces, utilizing that Rally Plus solution or a Meetup. We, on the right here, have what's called Tap IP. So long or still very, very applicable today. We have Tap USB, which is a point-to-point connection from our Tap, which is our control interface, to a Rally Bar, for example. We now have Tap IP, which is a directly connected to the internet device. So essentially it's kind of like cloud-based control essentially. So with Teams on Android, you're able to pair, it signs into the Teams account, and you're able to control your room that way as well. And now we're closing that gap in that ring now, when we are able to bring a scheduling panel to the outside of that room. So this is our Tap scheduler, again running Android, CollabOS, and it's got the Teams panel app on there as well.
Nice little Easter egg there, as well as our recently released angle mount for our Tap scheduler, which you can see there as a new accessory. Just for those who are interested, really a handy thing there for if you are doing room booking and you do have a disability access requirement where you need to have your panel down a little bit lower. It means that we can angle that out ever so slightly for a better viewing point. So it's sort of accessible for everyone.
Yeah. Rob, while we're there, can you give us a bit of an update about what's new in CollabOS 1.7?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So we last week before maybe, we dropped our CollabOS 1.7 update, which has a host of new features for pretty much all of these devices and improvements as well there. So top of there from new features is our CollabOS Relay, which means that out of the box now with your devices running a CollabOS 1.7 update, we can use Relay, which means that we can pair out of the box our Tap IP to our Rally Bar Roommate or Rally Bar Mini. We can actually do a configuration of the device off a Tap IP. Previously, we did require you to either have the Tap with Cat5e kit directly connected, or have to go through with a remote control or local network access there. So basically, just means that now you've got out of the box as part of your process, you'll get prompted if you do want to use the relay feature. You're holding the Bluetooth button on the back of your conferencing device, and we can pair wirelessly to do our configuration. Another really, really cool feature that's been in the works for a little while now is full 802.1x wide network authentication support there. So this is a pretty massive one that I think we're going to see more and more customer environments requiring 802.1x authentication of their devices. And really cool to see this one coming along. We have had wireless support for a little while now, but obviously, wide is best, always with a conferencing device. So that's been a nice little add-on as well. Some improvements just in general with CollabOS 1.7. We've got a new UI for network configuration, so we've basically just simplified the network process. You can upload TLS certificates and system certificates using either local network access or the Sync app now. And you can see also just in sync some remote device management enhancements there. So we can generate a provisioning code in the sync portal and enter that instead of it using sync credentials now for all of our CollabOS based devices. So that's really, really handy. I think we've spoken about sync for hopefully some of you have been on that session before when we spoke previously on that. So I'm not going to deep dive into that there. But a really handy one there, just from a general best practice security standpoint. You don't have to enter anyone's credentials to enroll your device within the sync portal now. We can do that with a provisioning code. And also just improved network connection handling of proxy configurations that use a pack file as well. Delving in a little bit more to products there. So for our Rally Bar, running Rally Bar and Rally Bar Mini, both running 1.7.289. Just further in microphone improvements there with both of those. So one of the things we've been working on massively in the back end there is steering, so our microphone steering. So that's basically what microphone steering is when you go from one mic pod to another, or from one mic pod to the microphones on the bar. It's just basically improving and getting those as consistent as possible there. So audio quality is always a work in progress and ever evolving, and I'm sure we'll see sort of further improvements as the product sort of heads on it into its in its timeline. The other one there is just from Microsoft Teams Room. We've got support for office hours now, updated to the Teams app version 1449, the company portal, and the admin agent version there as well. For roommates, really this is quite a cool one, I think, for a roommate there for the usability of the product. We've actually got right side support for roommate now, which is really, really cool. So previously, being an Android-based device, and roommate is a really, really interesting proposition for those who are not aware. There's not really any other product on the market that is like a certified Teams for an Android codec.
Yeah, that's right.
That way there. So it's really sort of a product out on its own there. So you can do a lot with this feather in our cap. But having right side support, so that's our group framing there. So it is right side 1, I guess, if you want to refer to that. But that means if you have a Rally camera, Rally system, or a meetup connected to that device, we can do our group framing. It is in beta, so it is going to get improved on, but it is open to everyone to use. Just it's just a little checkbox within your CollabOS settings or via sync. Also, firmware updates of our Rally system and meetup is another big one as well there. So obviously, we can always push our updates of our to our roommate via TAC or via the sync portal. But as part of that, from now, we've actually got firmware updates. So if you've got a connected Rally system or meetup or Rally camera, what will actually happen is baked into that OS is that latest firmware update. When you connect up your Rally system, it will push that update to the device as well there. So that's also been another bit of a missing link from a management and scale perspective as well, is not only updating the roommate itself, but those peripherals that are connected to it. As you can see then as well, we did have our Teams Room app updates. Tap IP, sorry Steve,
it's all right.
keeping you on your toes there, mate. We've got our relay support for Rally Bar Mini, and Roommate, which I spoke about before, and then you can see our Teams app version there. And then one more over is our Tap Scheduler. So basically running the Teams app version, so we can now pull down a meeting tile to manually refresh the Teams app calendar. We've got the ability to check out of our meeting rooms and our admin setting to disable room reservation on the panel, and then our support for office hours as well there. So really nice quality of life improvement. I think really from a Teams panel standpoint, as Higgsy can attest as well, we're sort of really seeing these feature ads coming in sort of thick and fast as well, which is really good to see from our Tap schedulers.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I love about the Tap Scheduler, the fact that it runs Android, and when it's combined with a meeting room that is such as a Rally Bar, having both of those devices running in Android is going to give you pairing capabilities and awesome features like capacity notifications and so forth. So it's amazing what particularly when you've got those and you got to remember, right, these devices, they're using the same account, they're the same resource account. You don't need additional licenses for them. If you've got a meeting room with the Teams Rooms device in there, it's that same account that you're signing into these Tap schedulers, right? And it's when you're using those same accounts that you get to use these awesome capabilities. So checking out of those meeting spaces, a new capability just launched. It's all well and good that we can reserve a meeting space, but if we finish early, we can release that room pretty quickly.
Yeah, all about the efficiency of your meeting rooms. That's really the point of a room booking panel like this. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. I guess while we're talking on all these Android devices, one of the things is how do we update these Android devices? And there's two ways, and I think we've touched on it already. And Andrew, I know you're going to touch on it a lot more shortly. But there are two primary ways, and one way is using the Sync portal. So Sync is obviously our platform. Again, I'm hoping a lot of people have tuned into our previous webinars for that. But if you haven't, it's a management and monitoring platform that will allow you to update your CollabOS and your Logitech peripherals, any Logitech peripherals that are connected. But there's also the Teams Admin Center as well. I do just want to make a note here that historically, previously Sync was the platform that had the latest version of a CollabOS update, for example, or any peripheral update, for example, from Logitech, and Teams Admin Center would usually be a version behind, N-1. That's actually no longer the case, and there is parity between the two platforms now, which is absolutely brilliant. Yep. But yeah, you have two options when it comes to updating your fleet, and depending on how you want to manage your whole fleet, you can use Sync, or you could stick with Teams Admin Center. You choose what's going to work best in your workflow and for your team. And yeah.
So there, I just think on that as well, I think we really sort of see that at the moment, I guess that the Sync and Teams Admin Center are sort of complementary solutions. Obviously, the updating component is one thing where they have a bit of crossover and you can choose whichever best suits you. But really, when we look at things like our specific settings of our devices and things like that there, of the Logitech hardware itself, if there's a cool feature that comes out, say like Grid View, that we're going to be seeing at the end of the year with our CollabOS devices, if you want to enable that on your existing fleet, the way you can do that at scale is with something like Sync, whereas obviously with the Teams Admin Center, that's really where we're looking at Teams account itself, call health, all that sort of stuff there. So they are that sort of complementary solution with a little bit of both.
Absolutely. While we're there, just want to quickly talk about in that selection process, making that decision between Teams Room on Android or Teams Room on Windows. And I'm hoping I don't have to explain these two acronyms that you might have seen quite often, MTROA or MTROW on Android or on Windows.
And I guess just before we get into this one, Steve, I will preface this here. This is basically just life cycle right there. There's no you're going to be locked into this feature or that feature thing there, but it's obviously a question that we all get asked all the time. It's like, hey, is this suitable for my customer? This is really from decision making. If you had to go deploy a system today, what do you need? These are sort of your decision making points there. There's no real limitations that I'll say, like a hardware that's going to prevent any of these features coming in.
Absolutely. Just some of these points, these key decision-making points. Is there a requirement for multiple cameras? So this may come up in those larger spaces right now. So this is going to determine if there is a multiple camera requirement for a large meeting room, for a lecture style room, for example. Obviously, Teams Room on Windows does support multiple cameras. You can select those cameras in the meeting. Whereas, Higgsy, please correct me if I'm overstepping it, but the multiple camera support's coming at some point, maybe with Android.
With Android, yeah. So support for USB-based peripheral cameras is coming.
Yes, love it, and it only makes sense that it is coming. But it is there. That's a key decision there. If deploying a room today, like Rob said, and that is a requirement, that will steer towards more of a Windows solution, for an example. Again, not locked into it. The Android platform is obviously developing at great speed. So you're never locked into that. Sharing audio over HDMI within the Teams call. Is this a requirement today? If yes, you may need to go to a Windows-based deployment. If no, then you can definitely consider that Android-based deployment there. Again, it's a feature that will come. Third-party room control via Flip Page. This is one of those. We partner with the likes of a few vendors like Extron or QSC, for example, and they have wonderful solutions to be able to do control for your room within a Teams-based interface on the tap, for example. But today that is only on a Windows-based deployment. We do know that they are working for the Android. They're working on solutions for Android-based deployments. So again, it's coming. It's going to be wonderful when it does. But for today, that's just going to be a key decision there. Content camera such as Scribe. So that's your whiteboard camera. If you haven't tuned into our previous webinars on Scribe, highly recommend going back and having a look at those. Rob and I are able to demonstrate how awesome that product is. Again, today, not supported on Android, but it is supported on Windows. Future release. will you be deploying interactive panels, and what is the expected functionality? So what we're looking at here is you've got your your interactive panels in your room. Thinking your Combox displays or your Samsung interactive displays as an example. Are they going to be used in your room? How are they going to be used in that room? For teams on Android, that does support interactive panels to be able to, as a control interface, essentially for that room. Otherwise, how is it going to be used that room? So if you are planning to implement interactive panels, come speak to Rob or I, or if you're in touch with Andrew, speak to Andrew. We'll be able to guide you. What's the best decision that you could make there?
Yeah, I think that's just quickly on that one there, Steve. I think that's sometimes it's one of those things there where someone says, "Oh, I want to have an interactive panel in my room." You go, "Well, what is the functionality that someone's looking for? Do they want to use that to be able to annotate whatever they're sharing on their screen? Do they want like a nice mobile solution where they can wheel an interactive panel with a collab bar and have that sort of simple configuration? They don't have to worry about a touch controller as such and be able to use the interactive panel as their interface there." So I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked around that there, and obviously that functionality differs between how you implement it between a Teams room on Android and a Teams room on Windows.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other one is also the layouts that you want as well from front of room display. We obviously launched front row recently. Actually, now it's about 6 months now. And front row is currently available on Teams rooms on Windows devices only. So if you want to take advantage of having chat on the front of the room display, which is one of the most popular things, is you need to have front row as that video layout. So currently it's available on Teams rooms on Windows, but we should see it land on Teams rooms on Android towards the end of this year, maybe start of next year. But again, it's a key decision, particularly for those enhanced meeting spaces as well. So if you're looking at those enhanced meeting rooms, those you've probably seen those semicircle desks and people sitting behind them, kind of like the old traditional immersive telepresence style meeting centers. Being able to build a cost-effective room solution like that, with such as the Rally bar as your primary meeting camera, and obviously using Teams rooms on Windows with the front row display, front row layout on the front row displays.
Yeah, I think the main messaging there is that obviously, as just to reiterate, these are sort of decision-making points if you need to deploy right now.
That's right.
But these are all roadmap feature set things that are going to be available over time as well. So
and like you said, Rob, this is life cycle. So this life cycle for the deployment. In depending on what you determine is a life cycle for your rollout, your next life cycle may very well be the Android solution, as it is ticking all these boxes for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're never locked into the one solution.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
All right, Andrew, I'm going to stop sharing my presentation and allow you to share yours.
Yeah, no worries. So what I thought we could do is just talk about some of the things that you may not be aware of. Some recent announcements we've made around the Android portfolio, as well as also highlight some of the security features and how to some of the cool things you can do around administration as well. So obviously, Teams rooms on Android, it's been around for 18 to 24 months now. And many of us, what we love about the Android devices is how easy they are to deploy. You just need HDMI power, Ethernet, as well as also if you've got those tap IP, you'd have obviously PoE to the table there, or alternatively USB connected to a touch display if you wanted. But they are so simple to deploy. I love the Rally bar and the Rally bar Mini and that whole out-of-box experience. Getting them configured and set up is super quick and simple. That's the beauty about these devices. From recent updates point of view, from a Teams app side, we've done a couple of things. The most recent one is actually not in September's update; it was in last month's update, where we announced Teams. We had direct guest join become available in both Zoom and also and WebEx as well. So if you haven't got it just yet, you might want to go through update through either Teams Admin Center or Sync and pull down the latest version of the Rally Bar or Roommate firmware, and also go into Teams Admin Center and make sure you've got the latest app version as well. And then you can take advantage of direct guest join. With the September update, we enabled a feature called Fit to Frame automatically. So if you've ever joined a Teams meeting and you've got multiple people on the call, and it's sometimes hard to be able to see someone because they've been cut off or whichever, and they might be sharing something in OBS. For example, we've now enabled Fit to Frame from room systems to make sure that they are obviously showing it at full screen. So if you've got if you're in a meeting room and another MTR joins that meeting, they'll come through as the full video, not just zoomed in on one person, not being able to see everyone. So if you're thinking about the way that intelligent cameras are going to work moving forward with Right Sight 2 on these devices, you don't want just to be seeing a condensed view of a couple of people inside that feed. We want to be able to fit the whole gallery as part of that single feed. So it's future-proofing it really. So you'll be able to take advantage of that. So it was again heavily requested. Fit to frame for meeting rooms is necessary. You can also now pin and spotlight people as well, a little bit easier. You're probably wondering, how do we set up Direct Guest Join? So the easiest way to set up Direct Guest Join, there's a couple things you've got to do. First is making sure that you've got the mailbox configured to allow for external meetings. So in PowerShell, in Exchange PowerShell, we need to go through and set the calendar processing to process external meeting messages. So this is going to do two things, actually. One, allow for you to leverage Zoom and WebEx meetings, so you can forward those meetings to the meeting room. But also, anyone that sends you a meeting from an external organization that's a Teams invite, you can simply forward that to the room as well, and you'll be presented with that join button. If that's set to false, if those settings are set to false, then the meeting room will just ignore the actual body of the email, that actual join information, either reject it or just give you the meeting invite with no join button. So we have to enable that in Exchange first. Next, we want to go through and update our Rally Bar or roommate device and make sure that it's running the latest version. And then lastly, we will enable the feature on the actual MTR itself. So going into the settings and under third-party join, you'll be able to see, you'll enable Zoom and WebEx meetings. And then finally, you can just forward that meeting invite to the meeting room and you get that join button. So a great way if you're thinking about if you're upgrading a customer's meeting room, or if you've got meeting rooms that are running BYOD, and you want to go to a more native experience with Android, then yeah, you have a confidence now that with Direct Guest Join, that you can now join those third-party meetings. Cool. So I thought we could talk about administration as well. Rob and Steve spoke about some of the things you can do with Sync from updates point of view. I'll just talk about the updates process and how you can manage these devices inside of Teams Admin Center. And then we might go in and talk about security as well. I know, Rob, you're going to be talking about obviously security with CollabOS and so forth. I might just talk about the security layer when it comes to the meeting room accounts and these devices and so forth. So obviously Teams Admin Center, or TAC is what we frequently call it. We've got a couple. We can do a couple of things in here. We can obviously see a summary of our devices, apply config, global config files and tags, and as well as also do updates of the firmwares. So we have configuration files, and configuration files are where you want to be able to push a configuration to a device without having to manually go through and enter it per device. So we create config files, and that's where you put like the date, the time. If it's going to, you can define office hours, power saving mode, display timeouts, and so forth.
So just on, I guess on that there, Higgsy, what would be some of the reasons that someone would have like multiple configuration files, and what's the benefit there of not having an all-in-one approach to how they configure their devices?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because in Teams Admin Center you get this global config file, and that just gets applied to everyone. So why would you create different config files is a really good question, and the logical one is creating it based on region. So if you've got devices across the country, they're going to have different time zones and they want different time settings. So naturally, you want to be able to make sure that everyone in Queensland gets the obviously the Queensland one, and when daylight savings hits, they don't move their clock forward 1 hour like our friends in Sydney. But the same thing with also in New Zealand as well. They're going to be operating at a different time zone as well. So obviously accommodating for different time zones. Executives might have specific features, so you might have an executive profile as well that they want to make sure that my screen never goes to sleep, or it's always on, or I have different working office hours, and I don't want anyone to be able to enable screen capture on my Android device. So again, you might have different use cases there, but time zones is probably the most common one. So really good question there. And we enable these by the Teams Admin Center. We've gone through, we've created the profiles. We then go to our list of meeting room solutions, and then assign that profile that we just created. So you could have Auckland profile, a Sydney profile, and a Perth profile, and you assign these configuration profiles accordingly. We also spoke about updates before, and how the updates work. For those who don't know, Logitech obviously owned the operating system and the development of the operating system and CollabOS on these devices. Microsoft obviously owned the admin agent, the Teams app, and the company portal on which these devices enroll, and how they enroll, and what you see on the actual once the CollabOS boots. When the Teams app loads, that's everything from there is what Microsoft are obviously engineering. But how these packages land on your MTR through Teams Admin Center, fundamentally what happens is we package these up into a single firmware. So we've got the application, we've got the Logitech have got their update. We collapse these together in a single firmware, and then we present that in Azure storage blob. In that Azure storage blob, we can then obviously pull the updates and have version control based on the previous versions, or understanding what version is currently running your device to present you with that new update. So the update will obviously pull it down and send back a response, and then updates Team Admin Center to say, yep, I'm now running this version, and obviously the device is then updated. But that just gives you an overview of how that looks. And you'll also get notified in Teams Admin Center when updates become available. You'll be able to see them on the system health there. The cool thing about Teams, sure.
Question. Sorry, Andrew, and just for my own knowledge, just wasn't actually sure. Is there a way you can schedule an update? So I know we've got automatic updates here. You can set the frequency, but is there a way you can actually schedule an update?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a setting that's right underneath what you see on the screen here.
Brilliant.
When you select manual update, instead of doing automatic updates, you can say manually update and actually define a date and time on when you want it to do that update. So let's say that you wanted to do all your MTR updates, on a Friday night. You can actually make sure that every single MTR that you've got selected, you can do a bulk change to say, yep, update these all these devices firmware at 9 p.m. on a Friday, and away they go. So you can see here, this screen here, that the schedule is set to off at the moment. If I switch that to on, I can set the time and date of when I want it to update. What you can't do is select which firmware version you want. You're only going to be able to select the current supported Teams Rooms app and Logitech firmware available through the Teams Admin Center. Cool. So now, one of my favorite conversations is talking about security, and this is an interesting one because, as you highlighted earlier, Rob, that when we're talking about security in Android devices, sorry, Steve, I think it was you that mentioned it. There's this
we all
misconception.
look the same. It's okay, mate. It's easy to get mixed up.
It's all good. We get this there's a misconception that Android devices are less secure than Windows devices, and you might be an FSI customer and you're considering Teams rooms, and you hear the word Android and you go, oh yeah, no thanks, no, we're all good. It's important to understand that there's a lot of security measures put in place from a Microsoft point of view to make sure that when these devices are enrolled inside your organization, that we make sure that they are secure. And there's some high level best practices that you would do, but this is the same with any video conferencing deployment that you would do. Things such as having them in their isolated VLAN, their own dedicated network subnet that is separate from users. And so you got your data VLAN, you might have your voice and video VLAN, and that's where all your phones and all your video conferencing devices are going to live. And it's important to call out that these devices, they don't have to have local network access, as in they don't have to be able to access other users or anything like that. You gain a little bit of benefit from keeping media local when they're doing point-to-point calls. But fundamentally, these devices are going to be accessing the internet for obviously firmware upgrades and time server potentially, and we don't want to be putting them through a proxy. But I'm not going to go into the network side of things too much. I want to talk about authentication and the way that we secure these devices. So we're going to assume that they're on their own isolated network. The way they authenticate with Teams, you've got a couple of things to keep in mind here. You might have local Active Directory with synchronized accounts into Azure Active Directory, or you might be authenticating directly against Azure AD. Either way, some form or another, you're going to be authenticating with an Active Directory service. But when we get there, when we authenticate, particularly via Azure Active Directory, there might be two additional layers that you want to consider. Conditional access is one, and Intune. And I'm going to be spending a bit of time talking about conditional access today and how we can secure these devices, why we don't use multi-factor authentication, and obviously talking about passwords as well, making sure that we secure our passwords, keeping them nice, long, and complex, keeping them in a database somewhere that's, like a LastPass or something like that. That where whatever password database you leverage in your organization, making sure that they're stored there, and making sure they don't are set to not expire as well. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a second, passwords and usernames, and these are things that people can do brute force attacks on and guess, and how do we secure that? Well, that's where conditional access comes in, and we're going to be talking about that as well. You probably already got multi-factor authentication enabled for your staff, and why would we enable multi-factor authentication on our mini rooms? Well, you wouldn't, because if you're ever doing an update or restarting these devices, IT are going to be getting that push notification that they need to obviously allow that device to then sign in. Or if someone accidentally bumps the power and the cleaners come in and they have to plug it in, that device is going to remain signed out and someone authenticates for that meeting room. So we'll talk about how we get around that. When we're building our conditional access profiles, and conditional access, just quickly, is part of existing license SKUs. If you've got currently today standard or premium license SKUs, then you've got the ability to leverage conditional access for authentication. If you're looking at the new Pro SKU that we've just announced, then you've got conditional access available to you to leverage. If you're using the new basic SKU that we just got announced, it does not contain conditional access. But again, the basic SKU is more aligned for much smaller organizations, and ultimately for more of a more simple approach to a meeting room. This is more for a enterprise secure environment, and the other thing to note as well is that if you're going to use conditional access, it's very quickly to go, cool, here's my Teams Rooms device. I'm going to plug it in, sign it in, and it's going to inherit all the existing conditional access policies an organization's already configured. This can cause us problems. It can break. And Rob and Steve, I'm sure you guys all agree.
Yeah.
This
very common. Very common things that the first time someone's deploying a Teams on Android device and having sign-in issues, this is usually where things get caught up in the net. There hasn't been that process put in beforehand, and that sort of pre-planning before deploying.
Exactly. So then that's what. So the first thing we want to do is set up an exclusion group to make sure that these devices, when they enroll, that they're excluded from all existing conditional access policies. And then we create inclusion groups. There might be dynamic Azure Active Directory groups that you want to leverage, so that you're not having to, manually add these devices as new devices come along. You're not having to manually add them to a group. You might want to use a dynamic group. So if they prefix with MTR or MR for meeting room, they automatically land in that group to be included. And that's when we can obviously build our conditions. So conditions, you might want to look at sign-in risk and user risk, device platforms. One of the great things is that we can now get down to a device level of when we're building our conditional access policies. We can actually list and say, yeah, only Logitech devices can sign in into Teams.
So how would you set in that device filter, like to find a specific device model?
Exactly. So there's no drop down list. There's no just put in the word Logitech and then away it goes. You actually have to go find what is the device property of your device. So let's say you want to get to a device specific. So Rally Bar, for example, only allow the Rally Bars to be able to sign in, but block all other Android devices, for example. So you need to go into Teams Admin Center and find your meeting room and the device that you'll find in there the actual profile name for Logitech Rally Bar devices. It's not different per device you have. Like if you've got 6 Rally Bars, they're all going to have the same name. If you've got Rally Bar Minis, it's going to have a different SKU ID. So you got to find that through Teams Admin Center. You can also find them online as well. You might be able to find what they are listed somewhere. But it's the easiest place to find your devices are in Teams Admin Center under that actual MTR room.
I think just for reference to people who are listening, if they're already dealing with this, often ours will start with a VR. Go VR0, Rally Bar, for example, with VR020, Roommate with VR030, for example. Just a little tidbit for people there.
Brilliant. No, good call out. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, exactly. So again, you can get specific. So you don't have to say, allow all Teams rooms on Android devices. You can say, yeah, just the Logitech ones, and then we'll block everything else. We spoke about, as mentioned, multi-factor authentication before. And again, you should not be enabling MFA on these meeting rooms. Instead, what you can leverage is location, so that you're only allowing sign-in of these meeting room accounts from trusted locations. And these trusted locations realistically are internet public IPs attached to your site. So anytime that your corporate network is signing into Teams, it's going to be going via a NATed public IP address from inside your organization. If you're in the office, if you're coming from home, it's coming from your home internet, obviously. But you can say, yep, these trusted locations, our offices, our Sydney office, Brisbane, Auckland, Perth, we know that the public IPs for these locations are going to be trusted. So you can say, yeah, meeting room devices from these locations are going to work. And if a device is then stolen from the office and try to plug in any other network, it's going to have a different public IP address when it signs in. So block. But this can catch you out if you're trying to do like bulk deployments at home, like you're about to go deploy 50 of these at a customer site, or if you're looking to spin up a whole bunch of these at home to take into the office. Yeah, this can block you. So just be aware of that.
Watch out. Yeah.
Cool. And then obviously when we're building these conditional access fundamentals, which applications are we going to be using? Teams, Exchange, SharePoint, or OneDrive, obviously, to access files are going to be shared inside of a presentation. Remember, these aren't stored on the device; they're just streamed from that cloud storage. And then obviously we're granting and blocking. So the last slide I want to share with you is just to show you what that actually looks like. So we've got our Teams rooms device on the left-hand side here, and we've got our conditional access rule. We're going to be allowing a specific device group to be able to sign into Microsoft Teams, Exchange Online for calendaring, and SharePoint for obviously rendering PowerPoint files. The device platform we've selected is Android, and we're going to be allowing it from trusted locations. As I mentioned before, securing that these devices will sign in from inside the corporate network. And our scoping filters, we've selected the team's Android device models. We've said the rally bar, and Steve highlighted to what some of those device model filters might be as well. And that's what we've got configured. So we're going to grant access for these devices, and we're also going to mark them to be as compliant as well, so that if they are not compliant, then they won't sign in. And lastly, we haven't spoken about it too much today, but we can use Intune and compliance policies as well to build out that additional layer of security as well, where Intune can obviously validate if a device has been granted root access and someone's tried to hack the operating system. And we can also block a minimum OS version as well. So we can say, yeah, anything running version of Android 9 and below, we can block that and only allow 9 and above, for example.
This is actually quite common. I think Rob can attest to this, and Andrew probably too. Is that a lot of the times there's an issue. It's primarily Intune that's going to block it. With a lot of customers may not even realize that there's an Intune server running in their environment, and there's a blockage of pretty much all Android versions, and they need to actually set that policy there to say 9 and above accept. And often a lot of our CollabOS devices, it'll pop up and say there's an error with signing into Intune. It's more often than not, it's that's stopping it.
It's exactly right. Compliance policies and conditional access policies, when they're just inheriting what's already there.
Yep.
These are the challenges that you're going to be faced with. Cool. Rob, do you want to take us through, or Steve, you want to take us through?
Yeah, I will. Let me go through my.
Rob, are you going to present?
Yeah, I'll.
Love it.
Let me take over.
Beautiful.
Let me just scooch ahead. All right. CollabOS security. So obviously we've touched on, Higgsy just talked about, I guess, what's happening in the team side and on Microsoft side. But obviously with the operating system, the hardware, there's some stuff that's going on there to also ensure that security. And I think part of that we really want to talk about is just those misconceptions, I guess, there about like inherently when someone hears Android, they think you're going to install some third-party app on this device and then they're going to access something there. And it's actually a pretty massive misconception there. So one of the key ones there is that application sandboxing. So any of the certified, for starters, any application that's installed on a CollabOS device, being like the Teams Room app is certified, and we work very closely with Microsoft. But that application is completely sandboxed. It operates one to its own, separate of the operating system. We have active firewall blocking. There's hardware device integrity checks as well. Hardware level encryption on the device. TLS as well is a really big one. So all that transport layer traffic that passes through from the device. And that other one there we spoke about earlier is that 802.1x authentication as well. Not super common at the moment, but we really are sort of starting to see more organizations really sort of maybe not implementing today, but sort of planning for the future for that 802.1x support of their devices. So the idea, I guess, is that we want to start with a strong foundation. So as a baseline, like our platform is based on Android 10. And we chose, I guess, Android 10 because it does have certain enhanced security and stability improvements over previous Android versions. And as one of the questions in the chat that we had a little bit earlier, our hardware does support future version updates as well. So I think there is end certification dates and things like that with teams on Android devices there based off, I guess, security patching of that Android version. And we do have the ability to update those devices to newer versions of Android in future as required. So we do avoid universal default passwords, things there. So Rally Bar, Medium Roommate, we follow industry best practices that was set by California state law of never having a universal default password. We do keep our software updated. So obviously those over the air updates, there's not just feature ads and things that we spoke about there. There's always security patches and things like that included as part of that. Maintaining software integrity there. So all of our images are encrypted and digitally signed during production. So that means what happens is when you do actually get an update come in, the hardware and the OS verifies that there. So, it's making sure that someone has done anything or modified that image there, ensuring that security. And then communicating security, as I spoke about there with that TLS, that applications running on the platform maybe similar additional forms of communication. So obviously you want to check with your service providers, as Higgsy sort of touched off there, regarding their security protocol. So that was a nice little tie-in. And then obviously protecting personal data. So we don't contain or store any personally identifiable information on the device. And that obviously does potentially change there with video service provider being Teams as well there. So I guess just the messaging we want to take away is there's both from the Microsoft and Teams room on Android side and Logitech as far as the hardware and the operating system we run. There's a lot of bases covered there to ensure that your not only your personal information, but also your data and traffic is secure as well.
Yep. I guess that brings us up to the Q&A.
Q&A part there. So
yeah.
Any questions that we have there? There has been a couple of questions in the chat there. One of them I'll put over to you, Higgsy, as well. It is about licensing, unfortunately. So MTR Basic License states that only one device can sign into it. Does this mean if you have an MTRA with a COR that you have to have an MTR Pro license? Sorry, you're on mute, Higgsy, man.
That's all right. I sorry I did that. So the way that the basic license will work is that yes, one device will be able to sign in, but the center of room console for that it uses the same license. So you think about an MTR on Android or Windows device. They're going to be supported to sign in no matter what with that basic license SKU. It's only when you want to have things like meeting panels and so forth where you need to upgrade to obviously go into to that Pro license SKU. There's going to be some more announcements about how the scheduling panels will be licensed as they will probably operate differently. And not requiring a Pro license SKU, but there's going to be more announcements about that in the future.
Yeah. Thanks, man. The next one there was just not generally Android related, just around auto framing of the speed for the right side for Rally Kit and Rally camera and meter. I guess the short answer to that is no. One of the things that we have, I guess, there with right side is that right side service is processed on the connected device and not on the camera itself there. So I guess one of the things to keep in mind with, obviously, with right side 2 and things that we can do with that rally bar, we've got a whole heap of additional processing available on this device. We also have a second camera in our AI viewfinder that really helps speed up that decision-making process. So one of the reasons it's not necessarily a hardware limitation, our right side framing takes a little bit longer because we want to be very deliberate with it. When we decide we want to reframe on someone, the system wants to really make sure that it is, because obviously we have reduced processing power on the device and we only have one camera that it can actually gather that data and information from.
Exactly. There also was a question there in the chat. I think we answered it earlier, but just regarding the parity between the update versions that come through TAC and also through Sync. Like I said earlier, there is a disparity at the moment between the two. TAC is getting version N-1, and where Sync is version N. This is soon to be not the case. It's going to be version N for everybody.
I think once CollabOS 1.7 makes it TAC, if it hasn't already, we're going to basically be in line with there. So we're not going to get caught in that mismatch of if you update via Sync in one instance and then want to do from TAC in future, that you're not going to have this mismatch there. So
and it's Logitech aren't alone in that space. You know, it's nearly it's the same with every other Android vendor and market. And you may find that with other vendors that you get access early access to other firmwares, and when you upgrade it through their cloud service or whichever, that all of a sudden Teams Admin Center is saying, oh, there's a newer version of firmware available to you, but it's like 2 versions back or a version back. It's again comes back to obviously Microsoft is certifying certain versions of firmware. To Steve's point, getting them aligned is a focus for Logitech, which is really, really good to have worked with that with Microsoft on that. So watch this space. It'll be really good when we have that alignment finalized.
Yeah. But I guess just general messaging on that as well is that you should choose a path that you want to go with your updates, and generally just for consistency's sake, whether you want to update through TAC or update through sync, just choose one and stick with that is probably the easiest way to manage your rooms. So.
Yep, and both solutions, you can schedule updates to working within change management. So whichever you prefer, it'll work within your ITIL process.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. A couple of questions just around support. Where should hardware support need to be directed to? That is prosupport.logi.com. We have a 1-800 number that you can call within East Coast business hours of Australia, and you can log a ticket through there. And I guess the other one there is just for support from Microsoft from a Teams room standpoint. Higgsy, is there where should people be logging tickets and things like that, or reaching out for support?
So support, it's always going back to the partner. We encourage obviously all of our customers to come to the partner and where they procure with that device, and making sure that the partner is obviously working closely with the OEM vendors as well to get that support as well. We've got some more announcements coming in the coming days about that support model. By working through your partner and through the OEM vendor, you're going to have the best support that you need, and staying close to obviously the likes of Logitech.
I think it was pointed out to me by one of our colleagues in New Zealand. It's a 0800 number, not a 1-800 number in New Zealand. So thanks for that, Colin. So I know we do have a few New Zealand attendees on the call as well. So thanks for the clarification there.
We've actually got attendees from all over Asia as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, really, really good to see. So there. Just some general questions there also around camera control. I guess there. So not at the moment. We don't have anything to announce, I guess, from a Logitech side for manual camera control. I think the AI and the processing and stuff's getting really, really good. In intelligent cameras just on the horizon and things like that as well. I think really getting to that point that we don't necessarily have to rely so much on manual camera control.
Yeah.
I guess sorry, Higgsy, go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's going to be a lot of improvements with cameras moving forward. I'm really excited to see that Right Sight 2 is in the process of going through that intelligent camera certification process as well.
Yeah.
When that becomes available, then you're going to be able to see that ability to have multiple people in a single feed initially. So you might have a room of 5 people. If you're seeing 5 individual faces rather than that wide angle view of the room, is going to be really, really good. So watch this space. Again, it's a feature that's coming. It's in the certification process at the moment. Logitech will obviously make a big splash when it becomes available.
Yeah, and also just on the horizon, there is some very cool new product stuff that's going to be a bit of a watch this space in that as well.
Yes,
there, so
absolutely.
I think it's really, how people are using meeting rooms now has changed so much. So obviously, we spent a lot of time having interactions like this. And then the idea of maybe coming back into a meeting room and just having a full wide-angle shot of 12 people in a meeting room isn't so engaging after we've sort of gotten used to a lot more face-to-face there. So I think that's really where that need for sort of zooming in on a single person and having manual camera controls is sort of becoming less and less essential nowadays.
Excellent.
Cool. I guess one of the things there that I think I get asked a lot, Higgsy, and maybe you could comment on is, I guess, the premium portal support for Teams on Android devices. I think that's the question that pops up a lot. Any news on that one?
It's probably one of the most commonly asked questions I get is when can we enroll our Android devices into the Managed Rooms portal? So nothing to announce just yet. It's still obviously on the roadmap. But I would stay close to Ignite. That's going to be running next month. We've got some announcements coming out at Ignite around some changes to Teams Rooms on Windows and Teams Rooms on Android, the managed services. So lots of cool new features coming very, very soon to both of these device portfolios. And the managed meeting room service as well. So if you haven't already registered for Ignite, definitely register and look out for the sessions around Teams Rooms.
Awesome. Go watch this space. Some cool stuff happening. Okay, we've got a couple little things.
As for a copy of this, so just for Joshua who just came in late, he's really keen to learn about Tap IP and wants to know if there's a way to get a copy of this webinar. Joshua, this webinar will be made available sometime shortly in the future. We'll make it available for everybody. And also Glenn has asked what's the best license for Teams Room on Android currently?
Yeah, good question. So this comes down to if this is a new customer or if you're looking to deploy new meeting rooms, or do you already have an existing fleet of Android devices and you're looking to obviously change over your licenses. Now, this realistically, if it's going to be a new meeting space, Basic is probably going to give you the minimum requirements that you need for an Android device to be enabled. It's going to give you direct guest join. It's going to give you that single room display. A Rally Bar can get enabled quick and easy for the meeting space. And Basic, you are able to get 25 free Basic licenses inside your tenant for you to leverage. Now, as soon as you go over 25 licenses, so that 26th room, for example, you do need to go to a pro license. But there's also other things that you need to take into consideration as well that you might want to leverage a pro license for. Pro licenses are going to give you the best possible experience because it caters for a number of things. One, you're going to be able to have access to dual front of room displays. There's lots of future capabilities enabled for Android devices with the Pro licenses. You're going to have, again, you're going to need that Pro license in order to, when it becomes available, enroll your Android devices into the managed rooms portal, into the managed meeting room service. And but also take advantage of things like Intune and Conditional Access enrollment as well. You also need that Pro license SKU as well. So, if you're looking for basic functionality, that single display room with direct guest join and Teams meetings, then yeah, a basic license will give you the minimums that you need to get started. But if you're security conscious, you might want to look at the Pro license, or if you've got dual front of room displays, or you're wanting additional features moving forward, then yeah, you'll be looking at the Pro license.
Awesome.
Thanks, Higgsy.
Thanks, Higgsy. And just one little note there, I guess, for everyone, for those people that are in our channel partners and our reseller community that are on the call as well, we do have our Logitech University available that has that goes into some training in detail on there. So if anyone who is a reseller of Logitech hardware wants to know more, then please, there's heaps and heaps of resources available. Sessions and things like that there. So otherwise, thank you, Higgsy, for joining us. It's been awesome. Been really, really good. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope everyone got something out of it. I mean, I always get little tidbits and information every time I feel like I talk to you, Higgsy, which is always good for me. And we hope to definitely see everyone on the next one.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.